It's 11 o'clock, so it's time for some live here. I'm glad to see you guys. Some days it's live around here, it's lively around here, and sometimes it's not so lively around here, but I am glad to be here today. Today is my Bread Lovers edition. It's Bread Lovers edition of Facebook Live at 11. So here is a little personal update. My sister gave me a sourdough starter. They wanted to do a sourdough starter, and so she had extra. She was feeding her sourdough starter, and she handed off a jar of sourdough starter to our family. And so I gave my best try at making sourdough, and it was an utter failure. This is the loaf that I made with my sourdough starter. It did not work at all. And so then what I did is I took the sourdough starter because I had to feed it and I was trying to figure it out. I'm like, oh my goodness, it looks runny. So I did what they said, and I took the sourdough starter and fed it, and then I had extra sourdough starter. And so what I did was I found some more recipes and I made sourdough biscuits. Now these, again, flat, but my kids liked them, especially warm with honey. I made sourdough biscuits, but then didn't stop there because I had so much starter and I couldn't throw it away. There was so much of my mom in me, I could not throw it away. So we made sourdough popovers, which is like a throwback. They were so good. A popover, if you haven't made one, try them. They're not hard to make, and they puff up and they're full of air, but they're crispy. You cook them at a high temperature and they're kind of eggy. So good. So then I took the sourdough starter and I'm like, this isn't working. So I'm going to make half yeast, half sourdough. I found a recipe that uses yeast, and that worked perfectly. Here's a slice, and it was so good. This was last night's dinner edition. So good. And then, if that's not enough, bread lovers out there, Anna decided, because she couldn't eat, she's a dairy allergy, she couldn't eat the biscuits or the popovers. She made homemade pretzels. This is like an Annie Ann copycat. Oh my goodness. So good. So why am I talking about bread today? Well, this actually fits in to something biblical. So today, again, is Bread Lovers Edition because we are in the throes of a bazillion bread products. But I feel like the Lord was just speaking to me about something that this is going to all tie together. Recently, I've been reading Joshua, and there's a story in Joshua, and I'm going to give you some tips about something God's been speaking to me from this book. And we're going to pick up the story in Joshua 9, where Joshua is the leader of Israel, and he has been leading the troops out to take cities that God had destined to give to Israel. And so they were on this basically military campaign, and they were going from city to city, and they were overthrowing kings, and they were overthrowing kingdoms and moving people off the land and taking the land that God had intended. Well, in Joshua 9, we find out that all these surrounding countries had seen what was behind them. They had seen what Joshua and the Israelites had done, and they were terrified because they could see, oh my goodness, this army that God's favor is on is moving across. They are moving in our direction. And they knew, based on what they had seen God do and the Israelites do over and over again with other kings and other cities, people that were out ahead, they could see this is our fate. This is our future. The same thing that happened to all these other kings and these other cities. Man, we see the writing on the wall for us. And so this group of people that from this nation, Gibeon, they got together and they're like, we must do something about this because we know disaster lies ahead if we do not do something right now. And so the Gibeonites had this plan, and they were like, we are going to trick Joshua and the Israel nation. And here's what we're going to do. We are going to set out to make a peace treaty with Joshua and Israel. And how we're going to do it is we're going to trick them into believing that we actually live very, very far away. And so they loaded up their donkeys. They set out to go and to trick Joshua into believing that they actually lived far, far away. And so they packed up worn out sacks of equipment and what we pay good money for now, distressed clothing. They made sure that there were patches and holes, and they were wearing their ripped Rockstar jeans, right? And Their shoes were worn out, and they loaded up their wineskins, and they didn't take the good fresh wineskins. They took the old ones that are cracked and made them look like they had been on a journey for a long time. And they meet up with Joshua in chapter 9, and they tell him, they're like, we have come from so far away, this distant land, and we want to be your servants. And so make a peace treaty with us, because we want to serve you. And we're no threat to you because we live so far away. And they're like, they showed Joshua their worn out clothing, their worn out shoes, the cracked wine skins, and they showed off their moldy bread, their old, crusty, moldy bread. And they were presenting it to Joshua, and they're like, we cannot live anywhere near the countries that you're taking. We can't be from a neighboring country because look at our bread. And look at this mold, and look at how bad the wineskins are cracked, and how everything is worn out and been used and used and used. So we can't live anywhere near you. And so they sought this peace treaty. And Joshua and the leaders of Israel, they jumped into this peace treaty. And here's what happened. They made a decision for their future. They made a decision about how much of the territory of land of God that they would take, how much of the promises of God that would be fulfilled in their life. They made decisions about who they would align with, who they would come into agreement with, who they would almost in some ways pair up with for their future, based on what they could see in the natural with their eyes. And this is so crazy to me. In Joshua 9, I'm just going to read this one scripture. In Joshua 9:14, it says this: the men of Israel sampled their provisions, but did not inquire of the Lord. So this is how they went about making a decision about their entire future. They sampled their provisions. They tried their bread, and they didn't inquire of the Lord. They didn't ask God what he thought about this peace treaty, what he thought about entering into an agreement that would affect their future. They didn't come to God. They didn't ask his counsel. They didn't ask his wisdom. All they did was try the bread. That's all they did, was sample the bread. And I think this is so amazing that they, again, based on the whole decision about their future was based on their idea. Hey, let me try the bread, and let me just see if truly this is mold, or if this is just like green food coloring, right? And it made me think sometimes maybe we approach life's decisions that way, where we just step right past asking God what he thinks and what he sees, and we just rely on our taste buds. We're just like those Israelites. You know what? We're going to make the best decision we can based on natural evidence, based on how discerning our taste buds are. We're going to just sample the bread. We're going to keep this evidence in the natural realm, and we're going to see, hey, what does it taste like? Is it truly old? Is it really, fresh or not? So I just thought that was so interesting. How many times, how often do I make decisions in my life, maybe about my family, the church, our future, even like smaller decisions, where I just blow past God, who is waiting. He's waiting for me to come and ask of him. He's waiting for me to go, God, I care about your voice in this situation. I care about your perspective, your view, your thoughts on this situation. God, I care more about that than what I can see with my natural eyes. I care more about what you have in your heart and your ideas about this situation than I do about just relying on the natural evidence, my physical taste buds maybe in that situation. And so I feel like God is asking us today, he's saying, ask of me. Come to me for wisdom, for understanding. Come to me, ask of me. Come for advice. Come for small decisions, big decisions, daily, our daily bread in some ways. God is saying, come ask of me. And I just believe that this is kind of just an open invitation for today, guys, to just go, you know what, God, I am not going to rely on just sampling the provisions like the Israelites did. I am not going to keep this just kind of in the natural and figuring it out to the best of my ability and what I can discern about how fresh that bread is, with these people standing in front of us saying, make a peace treaty from us. God knew how far these men had traveled. He knew about the future for the Israelites. He knew what cities they were supposed to take. And he was just the whole time waiting. Are you going to ask me? Are you going to come to me? Are you just going to do your best and try the bread and try to figure out how far has that bread traveled truly? So that's my encouragement today, guys, that let's not kind of just get into that knee-jerk human reaction of figuring it out ourselves, but out of friendship with God, out of a heart to honor him and to know that he is intimately involved in the details of our life and he has good plans. He knows every city that he has planned out in front of us that we're supposed to take, every bit of territory that he has destined for us. And let's do it because we live in just this constant, just walking with the Lord, asking him, seeking his face, seeking his heart, his discernment, and his understanding for our day. So that is my bit of encouragement. I am going to try to toast a few of my breads for my bread lover edition here. And I hope you're making bread and doing all kinds of fun things in your kitchen too. So that's what I have. Be back tomorrow with another live at 11, and we will see you soon.